What is up, RPG fans? In this video, I'll be talking about what I think will be coming in the Final Fantasy IX Remake that is coming inevitably sometime, whenever it comes out. I don't even know. And what I would like to see from it, from the story to the battle system to the art and all of the above. So, first, let's talk about some more like casual stuff. Let's talk about the art style first. And the art style, there's that one like person who started remaking the game from the ground up, and it looked perfect, and they should be hired, and they should make all of the art design for this game because it was perfection. And yeah, I really do not think they should try to go with a modern. I don't know, like you see the with crossover and like Ever Crisis. I don't think going modern is the greatest idea for this. I think just having a beautiful timeless art style, something like not like Wind Waker, but like you get what I'm saying, like a timeless art style, like Final Fantasy VII, go modern. Like that is not a game that we want to see. We already have the FF7 original already has a fun art style that, I mean, it hasn't aged well, but at the same time it's as charming as ever. But like FF7, you want to be realistic. FF8 remake, sure as heck want to be realistic. FF2 remake, sure as heck want to be realistic. FF6, definitely realistic. But if you're taking like a Final Fantasy IX type game, or Final Fantasy V, which I'll talk about soon in a different video about what we could see for a remake of that game, Final Fantasy IX needs to have its identity still there, have an art style. Like I was saying, like that person who like remade the art did it perfectly. I thought it looked awesome. Just it was beautiful, and it just needs to retain like its identity. It's a huge part of Final Fantasy IX that it decided to like interpret what they thought like the original like 5 games would look like, but in like 3D, whereas 7 and 8 were trying to go realistic, epic looking, edgy looking, you know what I'm saying? And Final Fantasy IX did a great job of that, but just having that be with like gorgeous landscapes would be awesome. Yeah. And then the music, just everyone, they always remaster it and it always sounds awesome, so just I have nothing to say there really. Just keep the music good. Don't ruin it. They wouldn't though, so yeah. Anyway, let's talk about some of the stuff that's like actually like interesting to talk about, because those two things were kind of just a given. So yeah. All right, let's get into the characters. So what do I have to say about the characters? I think that Blank and perhaps Beatrix, maybe not Beatrix, but if they're going to be making story changes, I'm sure they could figure it out, having Beatrix come back as a playable character, and Blank, because Blank kind of just like hangs around on the airship anyway, and I'm sure that in a remake they can find a way to give him a distinct identity from Zidane, give him distinct abilities. Like if Blank, you're going to save his life and he's going to hang around with you anyway, he might as well join the party. And I just think that's weird that he like, I mean, I get it from a gameplay standpoint, they're both thieves and it would be kind of weird, but giving him some new abilities. I mean, if we're going to make a remake, let's get some new playable characters. Like, why not? And Beatrix is iconic, and we just want her back, and that would just be great. From if they could work around it in the story, and just having they could work around the story, because really in the end they've been changing the story for different games. They've been like Final Fantasy VII, they've changed the story quite a bit, and yeah, I think they've done these things in other games, and they could totally do it here. Just make a way for Beatrix to be like a playable character. Everyone wants it, and it's just silly. So yeah, and honestly, the characters are already really well developed in 9. In my video about 2, I was talking about how like we could add more to the characters. And Final Fantasy IX just really, really already is very well developed. Like it does a very good job of, characterizing its characters. And I think that, I mean, more depth could always be great. I mean, they should have more depth, just like what they did with Final Fantasy VII Remake. But like, Yeah, it'd be cool. All right, so let's talk about some like random things before we move into like the big boys, like the story and um, the battle system. That's the one I'm really interested in talking about. And let's just talk about some of the things that were scrapped from the original release. So first of all, there's I in the original Final Fantasy IX, there's this idea that there was going to be a free movement during battles, and it wasn't just going to be a normal like they could run around like kind of like in Chrono Trigger and stuff. And we'll get to that later, but I just wanted to bring that up because that was what Final Fantasy IX was originally going to be. Is going to be a free movement during battles game, and that was interesting. Also, just let us fight the four Shrine Guardians. Like the fact that we only get to fight it with Zidane and Quina, that was kind of lame. Just saying that needs to be changed, in my opinion. And there's originally a point where there were going to be multiple endings for Final Fantasy IX. I think adding that back in could add some extra stuff to the game. I mean, the ending is already amazing, so I don't know what I would want to see. I mean, I really don't think there would be a point in making extra endings if it's already just kind of perfect. But I mean, yeah, I think the ending in Final Fantasy IX is one of the best Final Fantasy endings. So as much as 6 endings could be great, I don't know if it is absolutely necessary. But those are just some random things that I wanted to add before I got into the battle system. So for the battle system, like I was saying, there's like the original idea of the free movement. And free movement idea, it was like this 8-way run system in which it was kind of like not Final Fantasy, like Chrono Trigger, and it had this idea where like you were moving around the battlefield, and that was like that was a cool idea. So what could we do to make Final Fantasy IX's combat more interesting? First of all, if we want to like just from a business standpoint, Square Enix, as much as everyone wants turn-based combat back, as much as I think that would be good, Final Fantasy is a juggernaut series, and they want to attract more people. And I'm 16, and from school, from experience at school, most kids aren't going to be like I've tried to convince some of my friends to get into Final Fantasy, like the old classics, and it's just not for them. There's so many people who just can't get into turn-based combat, and there's so many more people who can get in action combat. But there's just a part of Final Fantasy IX. Like I was talking about my Final Fantasy II review, how it'd be cool to have like a Dark Souls, like gritty combat with like Type 0, like close, like quick deaths, where it would just be like a part of the game. And that's how that game is. Like it's a darker game. It would be cool. It's like a war setting. Final Fantasy IX is nothing like that. I think getting a battle system that really fits with the game would be cool. And I had a cool idea for what could be done with this battle system. It could be action based, but also turn based. And not in the way that, like, I don't know, 12 and 13 have done it. I think Final Fantasy IX should have a new battle system. Something kind of like Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch or Eternal Sonata, preferably the latter. Eternal Sonata does a really good job of like having a turn-based combat system with action elements. And I think that this could attract some newer, like modern gamers that are trying to get into games. I mean, Final Fantasy IX is already not going to be a game that attracts like new, like edgy kids. Like, it's not going to be a game that is going to hit as similarly as Final Fantasy VII Remake did, because Final Fantasy VII is like swords, guns, like it's like it just really is like the Buster Sword, riding on motorcycles. Like that's gonna appeal to a more wide audience of people who are looking for an epic experience. Final Fantasy IX, its charm shouldn't be lost, and I mean we should like try to get as many people hooked on Final Fantasy IX as possible. But that doesn't mean it should, like, its fundamental aspects should be gotten rid of. And Final Fantasy IX has always had a pretty slow battle system. And I'm not saying that it should be slow, but it kind of fits in with the game. It's a more slow, leisurely paced game. And I think having a slower, more, not like slow combat system, but a more leisurely combat system Really, I think Ni no Kuni Wrath the White Witch and Eternal Sonata are like the type of combat systems I would see work really well in Final Fantasy IX. And it kind of takes that idea of like the free movement run. I think Eternal Sonata is a perfect example of how that could be implemented, the original idea of that. And just having Final Fantasy IX be like full on action, like gritty action, it's just, I can't even see it. There's no part of me that can see that making any sense because it just wouldn't fit with the game. It just, I mean, people are saying I want it to be like the Final Fantasy VII Remake system, and as much as that's an amazing battle system, that just wouldn't fit with 9. It seriously wouldn't fit with 9, in my opinion. I can't really, I can't see it at all working. And, like, I see that Final Fantasy IX thing with Ever Crisis, and I'm worried that they're going to have, like, super realistic Final Fantasy IX characters. And I mean, it's okay if that is how it ends up. I mean, I'm not going to complain. It's better than nothing. And, I mean, but it just would lose its charm. And same with the battle system. I think, like, if it is going to be like Final Fantasy VII Remake, cool. Because anything is better than the super slow turn-based Final Fantasy IX. I mean, I love the ATB system, but Final Fantasy IX is slow as heck, and you can't skip like any of the cutscenes or anything. Final Fantasy IX is like my least favorite ATB system in the series. It's just so slow. But having a leisurely combat system would be awesome for 9. And I just think Eternal Sonata type combat or Ni no Kuni would be cool. For those of you who haven't played Eternal Sonata or Ni no Kuni, I'll give you a quick rundown. So Ni no Kuni Wrath the White Witch, you're like in a circular battlefield, right? And you run around, but there are like it's action based, but with some like turn based elements. Like you have these little inputs where it's like it's kind of hard to explain if you haven't played it, but there's like these bubbles and you cycle through them, and it kind of has a turn based like slower. It's not like full out action. It's not like a Tales game, or it's not like Ni no Kuni 2, and it's not like Final Fantasy 16 or something. It's more akin to kind of like a more menu based thing, kind of like Final Fantasy 12, but not like Final Fantasy 12 is more turn based with a little bit of action in it, whereas Ni no Kuni is more action with a little bit of turn based, which I think would work pretty decently for Final Fantasy 9. But Eternal Sonata is even better. It has something like Final Fantasy 10 where it like people take turns and it depends on their speed and stuff, and you can see the turns. Pretty sure you can see the turns. Maybe not in Eternal Sonata, but I'm pretty sure you can see the turns of people coming up. But the idea is that you have a certain amount of time in which you can attack, and it's like a turn-based system, but you're doing action attacks, so it would appeal to a wider audience. It would be like you can do combos and stuff. You can do cool things with your characters. You can go in trance modes and like go insane. Also, trance really needs to not instantly activate. That's awful. But just going like it would be cool because it would be action based, but it would still have some of that turn based flair. Also, another take that I just thought of like literally right now could be like a type of like Paper Mario, Mario Luigi type approach. Not like that, but have a more like engaging turn based battle system with different like button inputs and stuff. Because those Paper Mario games do appeal to like a wider audience, I feel like, than like Final Fantasy does. And just having something that isn't just the boring turn-based, having something even like Legend of Dragoon or like I don't know. I think that like Eternal Sonata type battle system would be perfect for me in a Final Fantasy IX remake. But I get why that was like that's probably like the weirdest opinion ever. But if it were to be turn-based though, I think it definitely needs to have something that sets it apart. And like having since 9 is like the epitome of like a bygone era of like classic Final Fantasy RPGs, I think getting rid of turn-based completely is a bad idea. Having at least some turn-based elements would be great, especially if it had some little action. And I think either Eternal Sonata where it like has turns but like you could go full on action, or like a game with action commands where you're inputting stuff. Or what is that one game like Legend of Legaia or something? Maybe you could have something like that where it's like I don't know, that might be too much of a stretch. But just I don't know. Having a combat system that's distinct yet still feels like it fits with Final Fantasy IX would be perfect. And in terms of the story, due to time restraints, there were definitely some things that were cut, different characters that were less developed. I think there was even at one point a playable character that didn't make it into the game, so that would be great. Having Aiko, Quina, Amra, and Freya get more development would be awesome. Freya was originally planned to have a lot more development, and it just didn't work out. So having more of the different characters would be awesome, and just diving deeper into them, getting more of like just their character, their lore, their impact on the world. That would be great. And I just think having more story, more character, I think this game just needs to feel like Final Fantasy IX, but it needs to make changes because Final Fantasy VII Remake is a reimagining and it is impressive. No other game has made such a good, like, cool remake like that. And that's really what, because Final Fantasy games have been remade before, like the remasters for the Pixel games with the new content, and it's great and all, but, and I'm not saying that Final Fantasy 9 or like 2, like I was talking about in the last video, need to be 3 game epics. I could see Final Fantasy 9 maybe being a 2 game. It doesn't need to be 3 games, but like 2 games, but it doesn't need to be like this trilogy. However, Final Fantasy, it needs to have the stuff that was cut from time restraints because it would add so much to the game. It would flesh out the world. I mean, if something was bad, like, don't add it in the game, but like, and definitely keep the not the quick time events, like the events where you get to see the different characters do different stuff. That was always awesome. Retaining what is great about Final Fantasy IX needs to stay, but it should be a bit modernized. And it definitely should not be as modernized as I think Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy II, or Final Fantasy VI might be, because the point of Final Fantasy IX is to be a callback experience, but it needs to have a reason to exist. Because just a graphical remaster, I've already played Final Fantasy IX. I don't need to replay the game with better graphics. I mean, like, Final Fantasy 8 Remaster or Final Fantasy X Remaster, like, it just looks nicer, and graphics aren't why I play games. I'm just going to be honest. That's not why I want to play a Final Fantasy IX Remake. I want to see how it can take story to whole new heights. And I think Final Fantasy IX already has a super fleshed out story, but yeah, adding in the stuff that was cut, really deep diving into the characters even more, having more skits, having more time for each of the characters to interact with one another could make a masterpiece into like one of the greatest games of all time. I mean, some people already say Final Fantasy IX is one of the greatest games of all time. While it's not like top tier FF for me, my favorites are 6, 10, and 8, but I love Final Fantasy IX. It's up there, though. It's like, I think, top 5 or something. Yeah, I think 6, 10, 8, then 4, then 9. But really, Final Fantasy IX just needs to keep its heart and soul, but still be distinct enough that it is worth a playthrough. And I think that that's really what I want to see in this game. And I do not want to take a Final Fantasy VII route where every character looks super realistic, and this Final Fantasy IX Remake should be something that I could pick up 30 years later and be like, that was a game. Like that, it should be, Final Fantasy IX always has like this timeless nostalgic feel to it, and that's what I think needs to be captured in this remake. So I'm really excited to see what there is, and I think there's a TV show coming too or something. I don't really even know, but if the remake rumors are true and stuff, the game is already being made, and there's probably nothing like what any of this I'm saying. I don't know, maybe it will have turn-based combat, and I'm okay with that as long as they speed it up a little bit. But in the end, this is just my ideas. Tell me down below what your ideas for Final Fantasy IX Remake are. Do you want even more innovation than I'm saying? Do you want less? Do you just want it to be a graphical remake? Just let me know down below what you think. And yeah, thank you all for watching this video, and have a fantastic day. Peace out, RPG fans. Thanks to my good man Chemo for being a patron. If you want tons of exclusive RPG content, join now as a patron today.